Hello everyone, this is Mark Simonetti from Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and I'm here today with Dave Loper from ClearCenter. And today we're going to cover DNS, DHCP, and Firewall. The specific things we'll review are networking service basics in ClearOS, configuring DHCP and DNS, and firewall modules within ClearOS. Dave, take it away.
All right, thanks. So we're not going to cover the installation, but I wanted to just really quick show you where these things are in the marketplace. There's some default basics that come with every ClearOS server. The ability to do firewall is quintessential to any type of stack, and the ability to have local DNS caching for improved performance, it comes default and stock on ClearOS. Along with that, we also get some of the DHCP server modules. So today in the marketplace, under the network category, you can see we've got these and others. So we're going to cover things today like one-to-one NAT, custom firewalls, DHCP, DNS, those types of things. So you can see here I have most of them here are on configure because they've already been installed. And if I look at my network category here, the two places that I'm going to find these things that we're going to talk about today are here in infrastructure, where we've got DHCP and DNS, and then firewall, where we're going to land all these elements to the firewall. Now, the firewall app that's in the market, the apps that are in the marketplace, they actually help you control something that's already there. So unlike other apps in the marketplace that actually, when you install them, they enable a certain technology, these technologies are actually enabled already by default within ClearOS. And what you're installing when you install these firewall apps are basically the management tools for managing what's already there. So here, let's talk about the DNS server and DHCP. So the underlying technology that's providing this is very, very lightweight. And so these two servers here, the services here, DNS and DHCP, this will run on very, very minimal spec services very, very well. There's not a lot that has to happen processor-wise for these. So when you're scaling out these apps, it's nearly negligible. Even a server like a microserver Gen 10 could easily handle tens of thousands of DHCP requests and DNS requests. It's really super lightweight. There is a limit, of course, to what can be done there, but generally speaking, these are just negligible in the calculations. Other things that you configure in your system are going to be your primary indicators, not these services. So here you can see that I've got this set up as authoritative. This is by default that it'll come in authoritative. It's going to pull your domain from your settings that you made when you did the wizard. Now I've already configured a scope here, and I'm gonna leave that alone, but we're gonna go ahead and edit it and take a look at some of the options. Here you see I've got one thing that's configurable with an edit, and then I have this that says configure, but it's disabled. Now disabled and configure go hand in hand because this is an interface that has a public IP, and your ISP probably doesn't want you to set up a scope, but ClearOS will give you the capability to do that. But I'm going to leave this configured because these are my ISP's range of addresses here. Here I've got my local LAN segment, and if I hit edit here, you're going to be able to see the types of things that you're going to configure for that. So we set the lease time. You can set it for various different periods of time. You're going to set the gateway. Here I've got ClearOS running as the gateway, so this is my gateway IP address. The range start and the range stop, the DNS servers that you want everybody to use. In this situation, I want everybody on my network to use ClearOS as the DNS server. If you did something like an Active Directory connector, you could put in the Active Directory server, for example, if you're not doing DHCP on Active Directory. Or you can even set up some advanced rules where, and you might want to do this anyway, if somebody hits your ClearOS server for a DNS request and you have Active Directory, there's some things you can do, and we'll cover it in an advanced topic about getting it to do what's called like a rainbow list or a split horizon DNS, so that it's pushing those DNS requests back in. So even though it's a request that's somewhat going towards the outside, it'll push it back into your AD environment. Things like your Win server, trivial FTP, if you've got like VoIP phones on site, your network time protocols stuff, and WPAD, you can set these options. Now, it's a full support protocol that's happening in the back end. So if there's an option that you don't see here, you can always go and add that in command line. So here with the DNS server, the simple DNS server that comes with ClearOS is part of the same package that provides the DHCP. And what you're doing here, for those people who are familiar with Linux and Unix, is this is simply a tool for editing what's called the hosts file. But because we have the DNS tied into the ClearOS server itself, it actually uses that host file to resolve things for other people. So in terms of Linux, that means that your host file is now kind of the basis for DHCP and DNS for the rest of your network. Other options that you could do that maybe not listed here, there are things that you can do again from command line to do things other than just host address. So let me say if I've got 10.20.30.10 and that was my AD server, I could call that ad.clearos.lan, and I could just say the alias is AD, and boom. Now everybody who is resolving on the network will, if they go to this host name, it will resolve to that address. So that's really simple. The DNS, DHCP, easy to get going. Now on the firewall is really intrinsic to ClearOS, and here we've got some very important basics I want to cover, because on ClearOS, management of the firewall isn't about making the administrator jump through a lot of hoops. On certain other firewall platforms, for example, if you wanted to set up one-to-one NAT, you have to jump through a number of hoops. You have to set up like the IP address that you want to use as an alias. You have to set up the port forwarding. You have to set up the destination NAT, the source NAT. You have to open the firewall port. You have to do all of that. But what we do here in ClearOS is we just make it simple. It's a targeted approach. So if you're going to create a one-to-one NAT rule, you will not do it in these other modules. You'll do no activity in these other modules. You're just going to do it in the one-to-one NAT module. And you would say, okay, I want this to be my, say for instance, I had Exchange, and I wanted to have my public IP be 209.90.117.195, and the private address I want to be 10.20.30. Say it's on 11. Here I can choose all ports and protocols, or I can say I just want TCP and I want a range, right? Say for instance I just want to do port 25 for now, right? So this is important because I'm going to copy this address here because I don't want to type it again. But when I create this one-to-one NAT, now I've got one-to-one NAT with that Exchange server that I have on the inside. And this address that's here on the outside, again, the heavy lifting has already been done. The alias has been created, the port forwarding has been done, the opening of port 25 has been done. All of that heavy lifting has been done. Now, does this mean that I can't add like POP or say for instance I was doing OWA or I was doing ActiveSync, right? If I was doing ActiveSync, I want port 443 open. How do I do that? Well, it's very simple. You just add another one-to-one NAT rule, and you put in the same public IP and the same LAN address, and I'm going to call this OWA, and I'm going to just have port 443 on TCP. Okay? Now, it's smart enough to know that this is the same server, so it doesn't have to recreate that. It's just adding the additional port. So this is the way that you can secure your server behind ClearOS and still have a a one-to-one NAT type relationship between that server. And it's very simple done. Now, I showed you one-to-one NAT first because it's the most complex. It gets easier. Like if you're doing port forwarding, for example, if I wanted to just port forward the address that ClearOS has for itself, in this case it's the 194, if I wanted to add that by service, for example, I can say, hey, just anytime an outside packet comes for HTTPS, send it to my, maybe I've got a SharePoint server or something else that, or some sort of web interface on that server, for example. Boom, it's taking care of opening the port on the firewall. It doesn't have to add an address because this isn't one-to-one NAT. It's going to use the default IP address that ClearOS has, but now it's port forwarding 443 traffic to this internal server. So very, very simple. Incoming firewall, that's even simpler. Incoming firewall is anything coming to ClearOS itself. So if you're running services on ClearOS like a web server, like I can't have a 443 rule in the incoming firewall and also port forward it, because the incoming firewall means incoming to ClearOS. So here I've got OpenVPN set up, and I've got it on the list. I've got SSH open. I'm using fail to ban to block everybody. That's how come we got block notifications here, because I want to block them when they come in. And that's mostly the incoming type rule set. Oh, there's one more. DMZ firewall. So say, for instance, you have a range of addresses that your ISP gave you. You can actually have ClearOS do the model where ClearOS has public addresses on two different interfaces, an inside interface and an outside interface. And on the inside interface, which is the pool of addresses that your ISP gave you, you can have legit servers and then give them legit public addresses, and ClearOS is standing in the way as a firewall. And then if those servers need to create connections into the LAN, you will just create pinholes to allow specific addresses on the LAN to be addressable from the DMZ zone. So here I could set up say I had a Microsoft SQL database server on 15, and I want to set up that ports, say my server, I'm running it on a different port than the default. Say I'm doing 4856, and I'm going to say this is my MS SQL server. I can open it up so that pinhole is open just to the segment that I have in the DMZ. So only servers in the DMZ can access the MS SQL server, but yet they're on a public IP address. They're the ones that are vulnerable. They'd have to be able to compromise both that server plus MS SQL through that port in order to be able to do that. And so this is the traditional DMZ model for firewalling, and we recommend it for those people that have blocks of addresses. The egress firewall is about blocking stuff that's going out. So this, you would stop specific types of traffic that are originating on your network, trying to go to specific domains or different ports. This module is actually less used nowadays that gateway.management is out, because gateway.management covers a lot of the egress type stuff more dynamically. But this is really good for a targeted approach, especially if you had certain abuse or certain destination domains. For instance, you could add country domains or other things like that, as far as targeted sites that you didn't want people to go to. So anyway, that's kind of what we have. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so these are the apps that you've had installed under the firewall. Are there any dependencies where you installed one-to-one NAT and everything else got installed, or is this kind of the assortment that you chose to install module by module, or how do you come to that kind of determination?
Well, in this case, we're demonstrating it. So I installed everything, right? So if you don't have like an extra bunch of addresses, there's no point in adding the DMZ firewall or the one-to-one NAT. Like if you're a small shop, or maybe you've got like a branch office that only has like one address from the ISP, you're not going to install those modules because there's no benefit to doing that. You only have the one address. So it makes sense to do the port forwarding, for example, because you can forward whatever's coming into that one address. And it makes sense to have the incoming firewall because that's what you're going to get into the ClearOS server. And then if you have special use cases, you can always use the custom firewall. And this is the traditional net filter firewall approach, where you're going to create an IPv4 or IPv6 rule by hand, right? So you can get down into the nitty-gritty doing really funky stuff with the firewall with this rule set. But my choice selection was to install kind of the kitchen sink, because the firewall stack is able to support all of these functions. And even if you do and if you were to get into the firewall.conf file, for example, you could still create a well-formed rule in that configuration file, and even without the module installed, the system would do it. So you could handcraft a one-to-one NAT rule and never even have the one-to-one NAT module installed, because again, the stack is already there. It's built in with ClearOS. These tools that I've installed from the marketplace simply expose the functionality that's already there.
So if you are a partner that's trying to do this for the first time, become educated on this type of technology, what kinds of things would you end up doing to get educated, to know how to put this all together? Where would you go? What would you point these people to? What would you advise them to do?
As always, every single module that we have has documentation. Also, you're going to want to look at this little tips and hints thing. So this is going to give you, this type of exposure. This documentation too is available if you're looking in the marketplace and you're just looking at the app and saying, okay, well, is this the module that I want? Is this what is going to give me the benefit that I want? You can go and look at any of these documents in the marketplace under the network, and then say, I want to know more about this. So I'm going to say, learn more about this, and it's going to give me the article about how to use that module and what's going on with that. It's going to tell me like the support structure that's around here. You can see that if this orange dot here means that it's supported by ClearOS. If you have support and you have problems with this module, you can get support from ClearOS. It's included. Here's the documentation. Here's the contact information. All the different things that you'd want to know about it. You can get that even before you install the app.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Dave. This has been great. So we've been able to go through a few of the things on firewall, DHCP, DNS, and a little bit on the configuration side. Folks can see that there's a lot of things that are intelligently integrated. They don't have to know a lot for all this to be put together. So great benefit there. So thanks, Dave.
All right. Thank you.